Yemi, you have a succinct and I dare say a quite poetic way of describing what you do. Can you tell us about that?
I'm an engineer by profession, an entrepreneur by passion, and then a transformation leader and coach by mission. And to be fair, what is consistent across all of those is transformation. I'm dedicated, borderline, slightly obsessed on waking up my dormant potential, but also others, in saying, well, how can we shift the perspective on how we see things? And to be honest, that's applied in all my different areas of work and life.
What was it that brought you into that world of professional coaching?
I mean, so if I very briefly go back, my dad was a lawyer and I think he wanted me to be a lawyer, but I really wanted to be an engineer. There was something about creating things from just thoughts to actually going into design and then building. But what I found throughout my engineering career is that even though I had that technical skill, it was never really fully about my technical ability, but it was my ability to relate to other human beings. I talk about sustainability. We talk about sustainability of our planet, and absolutely that should be at the forefront. But I talk about sustainability of human mental health, because without us having that as a priority, how can we care for our planet? And for me, it became a priority. So in almost all the roles I held in engineering businesses, it was really about the people. And for me, coaching was the closest thing. But I didn't want to let go of my engineering because, I challenged this notion that we can only be one thing.
Do you think employee wellness is becoming something that's increasingly important for businesses?
I mean, absolutely. It was before the pandemic, and I think it's even become more so now because, I talk about this in my first book. I've got a chapter called Time, and it's really referring to death. I think death of anything has a way of cracking things wide open. And I think what the pandemic has done, which has been a death of freedom or just life as we know it, has cracked a lot open, which has everything to do with our wellness. And so I think organizations are actually needing to pay significantly more attention. But here's why: because everybody has been affected. You would literally need to be the most zen individual in the world to not have been affected by it. So when you can have a leader or a CEO or a group of executives actually realize this discomfort internally, mentally, then they can start to see the other perspective. So I think they know it's a priority. The question is, how many of them are building it into their strategic plans? How many of them are relating it to their balance sheets? That's the question, but it's definitely a priority.
There's different sort of approaches to wellness, I guess. You have the leadership principle, top-down sort of approach, and then you have more bottom-up, I guess. Something came to mind recently. I was watching an interview with a person who was a high-ranking police officer in Glasgow, in Scotland, where I'm from originally. He was actually head of a special violence reduction unit that would go out into the community, do these outreach and rehabilitation programs. And it proved to be a very effective strategy for them. So the city went from being described as the murder capital of Europe in the early 2000s to then drastically cutting crime levels. And it was something that he said that really resonated with me, which was that change starts at an individual level. That's how systems change. So if you wait until you have some overarching plan or inspirational leader to come along, change just isn't going to happen. In the context of workplace wellness, I think that sort of feeds into what we're talking about, that there needs to be a willingness on the part perhaps of individuals to own our own wellness and not wait for leaders to guide us. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to the lady who presented earlier, Linda, and she was saying some things, and I completely agreed with her. However, I do think without putting 100% onus, even though I do think we all need to take 100% responsibility for our lives, especially if we have that freedom, i.e. we're not a child or we're not incapacitated. For me, it does start with us, especially in the workplace. I think one thing that has tripped up humanity time and time again, especially in the workplace, is this need and waiting for them to save us. Without shadow of a doubt, they have a responsibility as well. But there is something in doing this bottom-up approach where what I call the majority actually make a decision to say, okay, I need to take this in. I need a day off. It's a mental health day. I will catch up with my work. And we shouldn't, I guess, snuff that idea, because if we can't have control over our own lives, then I think we're going to start to struggle. Because if we look at all our executives, they are human as well. They are trying to do things they need to do to either increase profit or to keep the business going, and they will do their best to support their teams and staff. But how much more easier would it be if we helped ourselves and we got clear in our languaging to go and say, this is what I need from you. I need to work 3 days a week for a couple of months to help me, to help me with what's going on. I think that's the real thing. So you're right. It starts at an individual level with the view that the collective come together and you've got your leaders saying, okay, I like this idea. Let's implement it.
In terms of resilience itself, then, it's obviously a word that we hear a lot in relation to workplace wellness. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I get nervous about this one. Why do I get nervous? I get nervous because we all have, firstly, our own definition. So I want to put the preface by saying that this is my definition. I'm currently writing my second book, and the chapter is resilience, otherwise known as FU and your feelings. I kept it clean there because I do have a potty mouth. But that for me is a balance between two. Sometimes I go into the workplace and I have some executives saying, Yemi, we just need a more resilient team. And I sat down thinking, and you could see this particular one, like, their fists are clenched up. They need to be resilient. Back in my day. And then I came up with this concept of we all have our own resiliency blueprint. So for me, resilience is about understanding when we are going through a difficult time, but accepting and choosing that we will come out of it. And that doesn't mean it won't come back again. It just means that we will get through it. But in order to do that, we would need to reflect on our resiliency blueprint. For me, the truth of the matter is, if there is anybody still standing, still able to have a conversation where you are coherent for longer than 30 seconds, then for me, you're resilient, because 2020, you can see I'm trying to black out 2020. 2020 has really given us a serving of things we probably tried to avoid. So that's resilience. I think humanity underestimates how resilient it is. However, that does not mean we should continue to take a beating, for want of a better word. I think it's a choice to say, this is tough, but I know I can get through this because I did it before and I'm going to do it again. I think people are highlighting a lot quicker the challenges that they're going through. Obviously, as you can tell from my accent, I'm a Brit. I'm South London, but live in Australia. It's been home for over 7 years. And when I speak to my siblings in the UK, they've got this. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but they've started to challenge people calling in sick for mental health. So they think that people might start taking advantage. And I think that's sad that we think that way, because I remember back in the day that the same thing, if you were sick, do you really take a sick day because you're sick, or should you save it because you want extra holiday? There is this view, some organizations might worry about that, but we've got to get through this. We need to change the notion of let's clock in at 9, clock out at 5. It's got to be output focused, and it has to focus on the mental and physical well-being. Otherwise, your organization is redundant, or you just get more robots to do the work. And for me, I think humanity has a long way to go before that happens.
I know you talk about having that internal power and courage to be vulnerable in the work that you do. Is it important, you think, for employers to make sure that they have a culture, an environment where people can be vulnerable? They can be, whether it's about speaking about mental health or just in the course of their day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, once again, Linda, I didn't catch all of what she said, but I just saw the word psychologically safe. We do. And once again, I always get worried when I start talking about things, because there's so many buzzwords. We need a safe space, psychological safe. And what does it mean? And we shouldn't, once again, snuff at these terminologies, because they are there so we can communicate. But we do need to create those spaces. And I think someone mentioned it in the group. It starts with our leaders. To be a leader, you lead from the front, the middle, and the back, anywhere. And I think if we can get more leaders, not just the academics or the work or the technical experience, for want of a better word, it's those who are willing, as Brene Brown's, to step into the arena and be vulnerable. That's why a lot of the work I do, especially in trauma, it's to do just that. The minute I started to speak and use my voice, other people did the same. So for me, that's one way to create a safe space. But you'd have to hope that your your top team, and anywhere in the hierarchy does the same. So there's so many different methodologies, but it's got to be done, but they've got to mean it, i.e. when I speak, I won't get in trouble or lose my job.
We've got a question in the chat from Jody, who says, when a worker calls up to say they're taking a mental health day, what do you suggest should be the type of response from their leader to help reduce the negative stigma and support their worker?
For me, the first thing is absolutely, you need to, and thank you for being courageous enough for doing that. Is there anything we can support you with? I mean, for me, that sounds simple, but you have to, I've done the work. I did not come from a household where you spoke about mental health issues. You just did not. I only started seeing a therapist when I came to Australia 7 years ago, despite having a number of traumas of which we all have. So it does take time, but that's where our leaders and organizations need to start getting comfortable with a different way of doing business. For me, the first thing is, absolutely, do what you need to do. Please let us know how I can support you. Now, if these goes on for extended times, acknowledging that businesses do need to keep running, then it's okay to ask that. How can we support you? Understand this is a big deal. How can we support you? And you go from there. But there's so much support out there, myself included, that can work with organizations to figure out, well, what does it look like to support our team?